James Wilson slammed his laptop shut and stared out at the Seattle skyline. The call from his lawyer still echoed in his ears. His grandfather was gone, and somehow James, who had spent the last 15 years building software instead of car leases, was now the owner of a 2,500-acre working farm. "Damn it, Grandpa," he whispered, remembering the weathered hands that had taught him to fish in the creek and identify constellations from the farmhouse porch he hadn't visited in nearly 3 years. 3 days later, James pulled his rental car up the gravel drive, surprised to find an unfamiliar BMW parked outside the farmhouse. A woman in a tailored suit stepped out from the porch. "Mr. Wilson, Victoria Harrington, president of the Meadowview Estates Homeowners Association." She extended a manicured hand. "So sorry about your grandfather. We were in the middle of finalizing terms when he passed." "Terms?" James asked, confused. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The acquisition, of course. Your grandfather agreed to sell us 1,700 acres. We've already filed the transfer deed based on his signed letter of intent." James felt like he'd been punched. "I wasn't told about any sale." "It's all above board," Victoria assured him, handing him a folder. "The HOA has expansion rights via our community charter. Your grandfather signed acknowledgement of that when we purchased the adjacent Thompson property 5 years ago." As Victoria drove away down the dusty lane, James noticed something odd. A line of trucks was pulling away from his grandfather's largest barn. "Hey!" he called out, but they were already gone. Inside the house, among stacks of papers in his grandfather's study, James found a journal, the last entry dated just 1 week before his death. Asterisk, "They don't understand what they're taking. This land isn't just dirt, it's power. Maybe James will see what I couldn't show him." Asterisk. James spent the next 3 days in a blur of agricultural crash courses. His grandfather's farm manager, Elena Diaz, showed him ledgers, contracts, and distribution routes that left him stunned. "Your grandfather supplied 78% of the produce to every high-end restaurant and market within 30 miles, Elena explained, pointing to a map dotted with pins, including all 5 establishments inside Meadowview Estates. James traced a finger over the largest cluster of pins centered around the exclusive development. "They're taking our land while we feed them." "There's more," Elena said, driving him to a nondescript pump house near the property line. Inside, a sophisticated system of controls managed water flow through an extensive network. "Your grandfather installed irrigation infrastructure decades ago. When developers came in, they built on top of our existing water management system. It was cheaper than creating their own." She pulled up a digital interface on a tablet. "Their fancy golf course, their community gardens, the artificial lakes, all supplied by water that flows from our aquifers through our pipes on our schedules." James stared at the controls. "Does the HOA know this?" Elena's smile was grim. "They think they're buying land. They don't realize they're trying to acquire the heart of an ecosystem they depend on." That evening, James discovered his grandfather had rejected multiple higher offers from sustainable farming cooperatives to sell to the HOA. The reason became clear when James found a geological survey hidden in a locked drawer. Beneath the 1,700 acres lay an untapped aquifer that could supply water to the entire county for generations, a resource that would be worth billions as climate change intensified. "They're not just stealing my inheritance," James realized. "They're trying to monopolize the region's future water supply." James called a meeting with his newly inherited farm staff. "I need your absolute discretion," he told the 20 people gathered in the barn. "The HOA thinks they've already won. Let's not correct that misunderstanding just yet." His first move was subtle. Delivery schedules to Meadowview vendors were delayed by hours, not enough to breach contracts, but sufficient to disrupt the meticulously timed restaurant deliveries. Produce arrived just slightly lower in quality than usual, still excellent, but not the premium standard the elite clientele expected. Meanwhile, James appeared to cooperate with the HOA's transition team, giving tours of the property while accidentally revealing concerning information. "This field requires specific irrigation patterns," he mentioned casually to Victoria's assistant. The water pressure has to be maintained precisely, or the entire system backs up. My grandfather could adjust it by feel, but I'm still learning. Within 2 weeks, James implemented Phase 2. The irrigation schedule for Meadowview's golf course subtly shifted, creating just enough stress on the grass to produce visible brown patches. The community's signature rose gardens began to wilt mysteriously. The crown jewel of his strategy came when Meadowview hosted its annual farm-to-table charity gala, an event where local chefs showcased dishes using exclusively local ingredients. 3 hours before the event, James's farm called to report a refrigeration failure had spoiled all the premium produce destined for the gala. As wealthy residents in formal attire faced plates of hastily procured supermarket vegetables, Victoria Harrington received increasingly panicked texts from board members. The community's reputation for exclusivity and luxury was visibly tarnishing. The situation escalated when a water main servicing Meadowview's northwestern section mysteriously failed, leaving 30 homes without water for 18 hours. The repair crew reported that the outdated pipe had been installed by some farmer decades ago and was technically not part of the HOA's infrastructure. James's phone rang at midnight. It was Victoria. "What do you want?" she demanded, her composure finally cracking. "I want you to understand what you're actually trying to take," James replied calmly. The emergency meeting of the Meadowview HOA was held in their lavish community center. Instead of the usual sparse attendance, every seat was filled, with residents standing along the walls. James sat quietly in the back as Victoria tried to maintain order. "The farming disruptions are temporary," she began, before being interrupted by Michelin-starred chef Antoine from the community's flagship restaurant. "My reputation cannot survive another week of substandard produce," he shouted. "My customers are driving to Hillside now for dinner." The golf course superintendent was next. "The championship qualifying rounds are in 2 weeks. The course looks like a patchwork quilt." Before Victoria could respond, the doors opened, and a group of suits entered, representatives from the State Water Authority, invited by James. Their spokesman addressed the crowd. "We're investigating reports of unauthorized water rights appropriation and potential aquifer mismanagement in this region." The room erupted into chaos. James slipped out, driving to the farmhouse where he'd arranged for Victoria to meet him privately after the meeting. She arrived looking exhausted. "You've made your point, have I?" James asked, sliding a folder across the table, a comprehensive geological survey of the aquifer beneath the farm. "This isn't about revenge, or even about my grandfather's legacy. This is about resources that affect thousands of people." Victoria studied the documents, her expression changing as understanding dawned. "The water. The HOA wanted land for development profits. You never considered what that land actually provides," James explained. "I'm offering a partnership instead of a sale." The agreement they hammered out over the next week transformed both the farm and Meadowview. The HOA withdrew its claim on the 1,700 acres, instead investing in a joint venture, a state-of-the-art sustainable agricultural operation that would secure the community's food supply while implementing advanced water conservation technologies. James donated 300 acres for a public nature preserve that would protect the aquifer recharge zones, earning substantial tax benefits and community goodwill. The HOA gained guaranteed premium produce and stable water rights, while the farm received capital for modernization. 6 months later, as James hosted a farm-to-table dinner for Meadowview residents in his grandfather's restored barn, Victoria raised her glass. "To understanding the true value of what we have." James nodded, thinking of his grandfather's journal. The old man had been right. The land was power. But not the kind that came from ownership. It was the power that came from sustaining others, a lesson worth far more than 1,700 acres. As the evening ended, James walked out to the porch and looked up at the same stars his grandfather had taught him to name, feeling rooted for the first time in years.